This is for the leaders, the visionaries, the hope bringers, kindness instigators. This is your place to get loved, poured into, activated, and inspired. It's so good to be in this space with you this morning. Um, this week, what's been coming up and what I felt like our message is about perspective. I've been going through a lot of grief lately. There's been a death anniversary. My dad passed away August 1st, 2020. And then I recently, like 2 weeks ago, lost a really good family friend. And going through or experiencing deep loss on the anniversary of or around the anniversary of losing my dad in the way that I've known him and experienced him for most of my life has definitely brought up a lot. It's definitely been a season of sifting, of being with sadness, of sitting with being beside. Sometimes, too, I feel like, at least for me, I have felt like grief is almost like an uninvited guest. Like, I didn't ask for you to come sit in my house with me. I didn't ask for you to be here. I don't know why you're here. But really and truly, one of the things that has helped me, um, nourished me in times of deep grief is knowing that what I'm going through is something that most other people will experience and have experienced. And that has been something that has been almost a beacon for me personally, is that when I'm going through a different experience, whether it be grief or joy, that I'm getting a chance to participate in life in ways that other people access and experience as well. And there's always been something really important to me in my own leadership and in my own lens about being able to experience, give language to an experience that someone else may be having. Because I think that when we go through different kinds of experiences, it makes us a different kind of leader because then we are actually able to lead from a place of lived experience, of lived knowing. It gives us language, it gives us experience to be able to tap into places where other people might be. And I think too, and a lot of you who listen and who are here with me now are healers in the world. And if we're going to bring healing with us, it's really beneficial that we know what it's like to feel wounded. It's really beneficial that we know what it's like to experience pain and loss and joy and play. And remembering too that life is not a linear experience of happy moments of snap pictures, but yet every moment throughout our lives is valuable and it can be valuable. We're always giving meaning to the experiences that we're having. We are the storytellers and the story makers. So, one of the things that has really been coming up this week is, again, perspective. There's a story. It's about a farmer. I'm not going to actually pull it up and read it, but I think it's Alan Watts who's been attributed with this story. But I think it's a pretty famous proverb, and it's about this Chinese farmer who essentially goes through a series of experiences, and people around him keep labeling them as good or bad. Every time something happens, he says perhaps. It's like at the onset of the story, the farmer basically like loses his horses to a travesty. And everyone around him is like, oh no, that's so bad. Well, then shortly after that, they do a draft for war. And because his son has no horse, he doesn't have to go to war. And everyone's like, oh, you're so lucky. That's so good. And he says, perhaps. And something ends up kind of befalling the son. There's always meaning and perspective around what's going on in that story, where the farmer is almost remaining neutral to say, I don't know if this is good or bad. We'll find out. I'm not going to give it a charge, so to speak. Um, and I think sometimes that is the invitation of life, is perhaps that what we think may be happening to us, that maybe it's actually happening for us. But we actually have to have space and time to consider or to allow life being an invitation instead of a declaration, right? And there's a nuance there. If I'm constantly labeling everything that's happening to me as good or bad, or this will be the outcome, or this will be the outcome, which we can decide, we have so much power in deciding the meaning of our life and the things that are transpiring within it. And I think there's a really powerful shift when we stop going, life is happening to me. I choose to believe that life is happening for me. That's not always uh, that's not always a choice that's easy to make for me sometimes. Sometimes it doesn't feel like life is happening for me. And that's usually because, again, I'm trapped. Trapped is a strong word. I am sitting with a lot of sadness in those spaces, a lot of, and I use the term victim loosely because I think we run the danger. This is my issue and this balance of nuance here. I've had a long history of bypassing sometimes my own sadness in order to clean something up so that I can tell a better story to myself or other people. Um, and sometimes the reality of those situations is I have needed to just be with my own pain, not labeling the situation good or bad or being a victim of that circumstance, but instead claiming the reality of how I feel in that circumstance. And sometimes we do feel victimy. We do feel like we have, and again, victim is like I think I also am learning different language because I don't even really like that term um, because I feel like it boxes us in. What I'm saying about that is sometimes we are a victim, and sometimes that really does need to be acknowledged. That does need to be acknowledged. Our hurt, the betrayal, those things that we have experienced in our life. I think the bigger picture of that is not letting it be the narrator of your story for the continuum, is that you get to decide what that means to you for how long, um, but also like making space and room for the reality of how we're feeling. Because then too, regardless of labels, regardless of anything that we're going through, if we can allow the fullness and permission for ourselves to say the things out loud, to be as confused as we feel, to be as sad as we feel, to be um, the victim of a circumstance, of an action, if we can acknowledge those things, that's also when we can make space for um, a different kind of knowing or perspective. That allowance allows us to move through in a different way than if we are holding a specific attitude and remaining rigid and that this is the reason and this is why. And so I'm asking or inviting us, I think the invitation again is that life is an invitation, that it's not always going to be pleasant. It's not always going to be um, a beautiful experience that we're just excited to wake up. But we do have the choice each and every day to choose how we're going to respond to life's invitations to us. And again, sometimes those seasons of life where we are um, feeling tight, trapped, that we have been at the end of circumstances that were outside of our control, but someone else's choices. Again, remembering too that a lot of times when things have been done to us or we have been wronged, that again, that really has nothing to do with us. That has more to do with the person who is usually feeling a lot of suffering and again, taking their own hurt out on us. And we always get a choice to choose how we're going to respond. And one of the most powerful questions I started asking, and I feel like we've talked about it in a fireside before, but I was reminded, I was flipping through my journal this morning. is the question, what does this make possible? What does this make possible? Because that was a transformational question for me when I started asking myself in situations that I felt were difficult or when I felt like things weren't going my way, is to go, well, what does this circumstance, what does this event, what does this invitation actually make possible? To help me step outside of maybe a pattern I had been taught to label good or bad. Um, and again, like for me, going through loss, one of the things again that has been helpful is through my own lens of going through it, of understanding that when I experience things in my humanness, it gives me a chance to experience, to relate, to have language for things that other people may be experiencing. And it's really important to me that I'm a good friend. That's always been important to me since I was a little girl. And so that has been something that, again, has given me a way to transform or transmute some of the things that I feel like I've gone through that have been really difficult and hard and things that I never wanted to face. Um, and that's been powerful for me. I read a story this week too. This was kind of, I've read two stories this week, several, but two that I wanted to share here today because, again, these are examples of how life may not go according to the way that we thought, but perhaps there's something uh, possible through these situations and scenarios. I actually saw it was this news clipping about these two kids, and I think it was in the Northeast. It must have happened last year, in the last couple years. It was an older story because I actually thought it was local for us, and I was like, I had never heard this story. There are these two children who put up a lemonade stand outside their house, and they were younger than 10, but a brother and a sister, and they had been out there most of the day. And then all of a sudden, a young man stopped to buy some lemonade, so they thought, but he actually ended up taking all of their money and like fleeing the scene. And they'd made like $40 that day. And so they ran inside to talk to their mom and be like, somebody just took all our money from our lemonade stand. She was very upset. They called the police. They're trying to figure out who this person was. And then the mom thought, well, how can we navigate this situation? So what one of the most important things to her was that she modeled for her children to get back out there. So she was like, what if we try again? Like what if we actually just try again? And the story got out to the neighbors, to the community about the lemonade stand. They ended up raising or making $6,200. And I saw this clip too where it was showing like people traveled from out of state to come to this lemonade stand in order to rally around these children. Because I think there's something also really, really special to us when we consider children. We want to protect them, we want to encourage them. And sometimes, too, I think that that is an invitation for us to treat ourselves in that way. What kind of possibility can I sow for the little one in me? What kind of possibility is on the other side of this invitation I didn't necessarily want? But what is made possible through it because of it. And in that story too, I just love it. It really rippled out. Had that person not taken that $40, and had that mom also not encouraged her children to like, let's try again. It's a combination of everyone participating in different ways. And we could say too, well, that's horrible. He should have never taken that money. But how many more people experienced life and growth and camaraderie because of that action? It's not something, again, we want for children, but it is something that was transmuted. It was something that we also now, as a collective, experience the ripple of seeing how people rally and respond and can show up in community. And what a gift. And the other story I read this morning that really struck out to me, stuck out to me, either or, I guess, was about Christopher Reeves. And it was after he had been thrown off of his horse. And for those of you who may not know, Christopher Reeves was an actor. He played Superman in the original Superman, and he actually became paralyzed. I think it was a horse accident that he was thrown off of a horse. Um, and so when he was in the hospital, he had basically just been told that he would never walk again. And someone came into the room with a mask on at some point with a Russian accent, I think it said, um, to tell him he was going to perform a prostate exam. And it took Christopher Reeves, now mind you too, he's just kind of learned recently that he's not going to walk again. Um, and he kind of looks at this doctor like, you're going to do a prostate exam. And he notices behind, I guess he has a mask on his face. He kind of notices, he recognizes the eyes, and it was Robin Williams. And Robin Williams and Christopher Reeves were actually really, really good friends. And it was the first time that Christopher Reeves had laughed, like in that moment. And he wrote about this or said, it was in that moment that I knew I could survive and that I was going to survive, that I was going to get through. Um, this new way of living that was going to radically change his life in a way that he had never been. And he and Robin were close friends for their lives, but they were always inviting each other into laughter, into something more. And what I loved about this story is not only like what we're able to do, but what we're able to do together when we also invite others in to support us, when we have good friends who surround us and who make us laugh even on the hardest days. And I think too, remembering like what a gift, the gift of a friend. What a gift to be able to share our stories with one another, to laugh with one another, to be in life together. And in deep gratitude for what we're able to experience. Because again, I think that's also a choice that we get to make. Is this life a gift? Is it an invitation? Is it this thing that we bemoan? And in different moments too, I'm not making you wrong if you do feel that way. Like I have felt that way. I have felt like I'm ready to check out. I have felt that way. There's a quote too that I found that I've written in my journal maybe a couple years ago that I thought was also fitting for us today that I love, except I'm going to have a caveat for it. And this is Abraham Joshua Herschel. He said, our goal should be to live life in radical amazement, to get up in the morning and look at the world in a way that takes nothing for granted. Everything is phenomenal. Everything is incredible. Never treat life casually. To be spiritual is to be amazed. I love this quote, except I don't really agree with never treating life casually. And the only reason I say that is older me would have been like, yes, never. It's always a gift. I do believe it's always a gift. But for me, sometimes in that rigid holding, in that in that stance of I will not like allow this to be anything other than good or whatever I was doing. Again, I was bypassing my own experience to feel pain, to feel true sorrow, to feel full sadness. And casually for me, I was holding such a rigid idea of like needing life to be this amazing experience. And it is, even when it's bad. I'm putting that in quotes, even when things befall us in such a way that we didn't expect or we weren't counting on. So for me, casually just means like I needed to lighten up. Like I actually needed some ways to stop treating life so seriously, to being an advocate and rigid, like, no, it is a gift, to allow, like, well, sometimes it doesn't feel like a gift. That's okay too, if that makes sense. Because I think, again, when we hold that rigid construct of something, we're almost bound to it. We're chained. We're almost in this cage. And for me, it's a cage of has been. a cage of perfectionism or wanting to hold something so tightly so that I could feel like I was in control of the experience. And sometimes it doesn't feel like we are. And even the admission of that is important. At the end of the day, we still have that choice, but allowing ourselves to experience, to be with the feelings, even when they're also not adult, and putting those or grown up or whatever we put the label on those things. It's been so important for me to allow, even when I know like some of the thoughts that I've had in these hard moments, I know that they're actually not how I feel as a whole, but in this moment, it is how I felt. And I think that that's what's important to acknowledge. For me, it felt like if I give that even one step, it's going to take me off the mountain or whatever path I'm on. um, but the allowance of that invitation to experience a different kind of perspective has been so, so important. And again, to an invitation into play, into letting myself be a participant in life, not an example of life. Like it, again, very rigid, very trying to keep things pristine. And again, that was learned, and I don't want that anymore. That's not something I want to encourage people to strive for. So even in this moment, like I've said, even if you're in a place where life doesn't feel like that great of an invitation, that's okay. That's okay too. But again, we get to choose that perspective. We get to walk through it, and we get to always be the meaning maker of the stories that are befalling us. I've got our card for us today. Let's see what we've got here. So today we have Traveler, move in a new direction. This comes from the Angels and Ancestors Oracle deck. The message of the card: welcome any opportunities to travel, either to the outer world or your inner worlds. The Traveler card represents the gypsy spirit within. The opportunity to move in a new direction is coming your way, and ancestral wisdom is encouraging you to welcome it with open arms. Going on a trip is an exciting process because not only do you learn about the world, you also learn about yourself. This card often comes up when you have a chance to go through a process of awakening and understand even more about the amazing qualities you have to share with the world. Often such journeys can be lonely, but this in itself can teach you that you are never really alone and your angels and ancestors are there for you. The road you are on may be the road less traveled, but this journey is going to be highly beneficial for your emotional and spiritual growth. If it isn't about covering outer distance, it's about covering distance within, and you will be evolving every single moment of it. Remember to keep things simple and to lighten your load because that will make your journey more enjoyable. You are also being encouraged to see how far you've come and how you've really grown as a person because this recognition will support you in going even further. And there's a good chance that along the way, you'll make new friends who will become companions for a lifetime. I love travel, and I think that's one of the things too that I value about travel is that you don't know. You don't know if you're going to be stuck in traffic. You don't know if you're going to have to take a different route. You don't know if you're going to have to stay in a different place. That's happened to Serge and I before, where we've, booked something, showed up, and it was not at all the thing that we thought it was going to be. We met different people through those avenues. We were in different spaces, places, and time to experience something different. I'm actually being reminded too, when I was in middle school, my parents always wanted to go to the beach when I was younger, and I found the beach really boring. I just did not enjoy it. I always wanted to be going to cities or doing something where I felt like there was more to do. Because when we go to the beach, it was like we're going to the beach. We might eat out, but we're there. And for them, they wanted to relax. They wanted to get away. They wanted to be away from noise and lots of things going on. But for me as a kid, I was like, I want to be where the action is. For me, that meant cities. So for I had one year where I got to pick where we would take a trip, and think I was in sixth or seventh grade, and we went to Chicago. And the first day that we got into the city, we were on Madison Avenue. And if you've never been there or don't know, Madison Avenue is one of the busiest streets, maybe in the United States. It's a very, very popular street with lots of shopping. And we had driven our family van from Kentucky. And my dad hit a pothole in the road, and it actually ended up breaking our axle on Madison Avenue. So we have never really, as a family, had a ton of money. My mom was crying because they didn't really even know, in hindsight, too, I didn't know everything that was going on. We've talked about this as a family. I don't know that we even knew we were going to stay when we got there. I don't remember those details. But my dad basically, this is also before cell phones were really a thing. So my dad got out of the car, and she had also recently had, my brother was young. We just had the two of us at the time. So Josh probably was 2 or 3. So we've got kiddos in the car, mom's in the front, people honking at us because we're stopped in the middle of this really busy road. And so dad goes into, I think it's like a coffee shop, and he's asking for a phone book. And so this, thing we weren't expecting was transpiring. I remember too telling my mom, everything's gonna be okay. Like it's all gonna be okay. Um, and talking to my brother because he's crying, she's crying, and my dad ends up coming back outside and telling us, well, he met this, I think it was a barista when he was asking for a phone book, told him what was happening. They got a tow truck, but this barista had a brother who worked at a hotel and told his brother what was going on. We got to stay in this like 2-bedroom suite for like a ridiculous rate that we would have never had. The car went into the tow shop, which actually also ended up being a really great thing because in Chicago, there's a lot of really expensive parking. So if we had our family vehicle, which is how we planned to transport ourselves the entire time instead of using public transport, we would have been paying really, really extreme fees to park that family vehicle. So I think all in all, we ended up saving money because the car axle was broken. It wasn't the way that we wanted to start that trip, but we got to experience so much kindness in strangers who wanted to support and rally around us. And it's a trip too that I will always remember. I also remember that was the year that I've always loved movies. I asked for the wedding planner. So I got that DVD and I had my computer and I watched it like every night in my own little room in our suite, which again, we would have never been able to afford. Um, and that is still something to this day that I treasure and I think about the power of perspective of what's happening. What does this make possible? What does this moment, this grief, this sadness, this joy, this amazing life that we're in the midst of, what is it making possible that we get to experience? Like, what a gift. And sometimes it doesn't feel like such a gift, and that's okay too. But thank you so much for being here this morning. I'll see you next week.